Also, stick around until the end of the video, when there will be 5 multiple choice quiz questions based on the facts contained within the video. So have a go at those and see how many you can get right. Okay, so let's begin the facts frenzy as I whisper facts about St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, or the Feast of St. Patrick, is a cultural and religious celebration held on the 17th of March, the traditional death date of St. Patrick, the foremost patron saint of Ireland. St. Patrick's Day was made an official Christian feast day in the early 17th century and is observed by the Catholic Church, the Anglican Communion, and the Eastern Orthodox Church, as well as the Lutheran Church. And as always with these videos, sometimes I'm not going to pronounce some of the words absolutely perfectly, but I am going to do my very best. The day commemorates St. Patrick and the arrival of Christianity in Ireland, and celebrates the heritage and culture of the Irish in general. Celebrations generally involve public parades and festivals and the wearing of green attire or shamrocks. Christians also attend church services, and historically the Lenten restrictions on eating and drinking alcohol were lifted for the day, which has encouraged and propagated the holiday tradition of alcohol consumption. St. Patrick's Day is a public holiday in the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, the Canadian province of Newfoundland, and the British Overseas Territory of Montserrat. It is also widely celebrated in the United Kingdom, Canada, USA, Brazil, Argentina, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, especially amongst Irish diaspora. St. Patrick's Day is celebrated in more countries than any other national festival. Modern celebrations have been greatly influenced by those of the Irish diaspora, particularly those that developed in North America. However, there has been criticism of St. Patrick's Day celebrations for having become too commercialized and for fostering negative stereotypes of the Irish people. Okay, so there we have our first sort of general paragraph on what St. Patrick's Day is and where it is primarily celebrated. And I have to say that I am surprised. I had no idea how widespread the event was. I mean, we have places like Brazil, Japan, Australia and New Zealand. It's quite surprising to me that it is as widespread as it appears to be. I always knew that it was celebrated in America. I've seen the river in Chicago dyed green before, which is quite well known. And I've always known the links between Ireland and America, but yeah, pretty surprising that it is celebrated in so many countries. St. Patrick's Day commemorates the arrival of Christianity in Ireland. Christian deacon, it has been suggested that he probably took on the role because of tax incentives, and there is no evidence that Patrick came from a particularly religious family. Far from being a saint until he was 16, Patrick considered himself a pagan. Patrick was about 16 years old when he was abducted and enslaved by Irish marauders under their leader, Niall of the Nine Hostages. It's quite an interesting name to have, Niall of the Nine Hostages. There is some dispute over where this captivity took place, although many believe he was taken to live in Mount Slemish in County Antrim. It is more likely that he was held in County Mayo. During his captivity, he became closer to God. According to his writing, a voice, which he believed to be God's, spoke to him in a dream, telling him it was time to leave Ireland. After travelling for more than 200 miles by foot, he was eventually given passage on a boat travelling across the Irish Sea. His first destination was Britain. Patrick also reported that he experienced a second revelation, an angel in a dream telling him to return to Ireland as a missionary. Alright, so that's a short passage on the brief history of who St. Patrick was. I don't want to go too much into who he was in this video, as I think that's for another day. This video is primarily about facts surrounding the day itself, rather than St. Patrick himself, but I thought it would be good to include a brief history of who he was for some context. Wearing green has become a staple of St. Patrick's Day, but the holiday was originally associated with the colour blue. It's thought that the shift to green happened because of Ireland's nickname, the Emerald Isle. The green in the Irish flag and the shamrock or clover. Green ribbons and shamrocks were worn as early as the 17th century. During the Irish Rebellion of 1798, an uprising against British rule in Ireland, Irish soldiers wore full green uniforms on March the 17th to make a political statement. Legend says that each leaf of the clover has a meaning: hope, faith, love, and luck. Yeah, and this is a fact that I have heard before, and I believe the chances of you finding ancestry live in the United States than in Ireland. Wow, that is a stunning fact. More people of Irish ancestry live in the US than Ireland. I mean, I guess that's to do with the vastly different populations. I think the US has well over 300 million people. One claim in history deeply associated with St. Patrick is that he banished all the snakes from Ireland. However, this claim is not true because it has been discovered that the chances of survival of snakes in Ireland are minimal because of the cold conditions of the region. However, some say that the snakes represent the pagans he converted to Christianity. '62 marked the first time Chicago dyed their river green for St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, I mentioned this a few minutes ago about how I was aware of the river in Chicago dyeing their river green. And it's really because of the movie The Fugitive that I'm aware of this fact, the Harrison Ford movie. There's a scene where he's being chased during a St. Patrick's Day parade, and you see the people marching, and there's an aerial view of the Green River, etc. It's a great movie. It's well worth checking out if you haven't seen it. It's about a man who's falsely accused of the murder of his wife, who sets about clearing his name whilst being hunted by the US Marshals. So yeah, it's because of that movie that really sort of brought to my attention that the Chicago River gets dyed green during St. Patrick's Day. Beer is one of the most widely consumed beverages on St. Patrick's Day. While the Irish beer Guinness remains a top St. Patrick's Day choice, a disturbing trend is the consumption of green beer dyed with food colouring. Guinness almost double their sales on St. Patrick's Day as compared to any other day of the year. On St. Patrick's Day of 2017, a worldwide total of 13 million pints of the Irish Stout were consumed. I've never actually tried Guinness before, I have to admit. I'm not a big drinker at all. It's just not a hobby of mine, but Guinness, I don't know, I guess I'd be open to trying it. I've tried beer before, and I have to say that I'm not a fan at all. I just don't like the taste of it. And if I do drink anything, then I prefer something sweet like apple cider or something like that. But yeah, the sales of Guinness on St. Patrick's Day you would expect to be through the roof for such an occasion. And regarding green beer, yeah, that really doesn't appeal at all, and I've heard before that it can actually contribute towards cancer, so really that's one to avoid, even if it is just once a year. Celebrations of St. Patrick's Day would not be complete without parades, festivals, and a social gathering that typically involves Gaelic folk music and dancing. Many cities hold parades in honour of the event. In 1762, the first New York City parade took place, 14 years before the Declaration of Independence by a group participants. The St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York is the world's oldest civilian parade and the largest in the United States, and more than 3 million spectators line the parade route, which is 1.5 miles long. The parade takes more than 5 hours to come to an end. Yeah, this is a really cool fact, and one that isn't too surprising really. The fact that New York has the world's largest St. Patrick's Day Parade. As I think I've mentioned before in a video, everything just seems to be a lot bigger in America than anywhere else. They don't do things by half, they really do put on a good show at such events. 17th century celebrations of St. Patrick's Day in Ireland were often brought to a close with the final tradition of placing a shamrock in a glass of whiskey before downing it. And I wonder who exactly had this honour of bringing the celebrations to a close. It would probably be somebody high up in power within Ireland, you would imagine, but it doesn't actually say who had the honour of doing this. But yeah, it sounds like a good way to bring the celebrations to a close. While Irish Americans are now proud to showcase their heritage, the Irish were not always celebrated by fellow Americans. Beginning in 1845, a devastating potato blight caused widespread hunger throughout Ireland. While approximately 1 million perished, another 2 million abandoned their land in the largest single population movement of the 19th century. Most of the exiles, nearly a quarter of the Irish nation, came to the shores of the United States. Once they arrived, the Irish refugees were looked down upon as disease-ridden, unskilled, and a drain on welfare budgets. I love this fact. I think it's really interesting, and the Irish potato famine is something that I know about and I'm keen to do a video on at some point in the future. It really was a terrible time in Ireland's history, and it's a part of history that I'd love to learn more about. So if that's something that interests you, keep an eye out for that video in the future. The world's shortest St. Patrick's Day Parade is held in Arkansas, which runs for a total of 98 feet. I'm just trying to picture what that would look like. 98 feet is a very short distance. Might be something worth looking up. Every year, in honour of St. Patrick's Day, the Sydney Opera House, the Eiffel Tower, and the Giza Pyramids are all illuminated with green lights. And I still can't get over the fact that the event is celebrated worldwide. seen that one. It was made back in the 1950s, I believe. It's a real classic live action movie from Disney. I won't go into it too much, but it's set in Ireland and there are leprechauns and there's magic, and it's just one of my all-time favourite childhood movies growing up, and a movie that I will always be fond of. St. Patrick's Day commemorates the date of St. Patrick's death. According to legend, Patrick was 122 years old when he died, and is believed to be buried in Downpatrick, County Down. 122 years old. Wow. I mean, surely that can't be true. I'm not sure how reliable that piece of information could be, but if he lived to 122, he'd be one of the world's oldest living human beings in history. But who am I to say? Also, he's believed to be buried in Downpatrick. Well, that is here in Northern Ireland, which is quite interesting. I imagine he was maybe buried in Dublin or somewhere in the south. So there we go. Century New Zealanders celebrated St. Patrick's Day with a series of athletic contests. That's a pretty cool fact, I think, and I wonder what sort of events took place during these contests. It makes me think about the Olympics and the events that took place way back at the very beginning, and how vastly different they are today. I actually did a facts video on the Olympics back in the early days of my channel, in which I didn't share opinions in that one, so it really was way back at the very start of when I was making fact videos, and I just give the facts one by one. But yeah, feel free to check that one out if it interests you. I will put the link down in the description. St. Patrick's Day is not celebrated on March the 17th, when it falls within the Holy Week. This once happened when the day coincided with Palm Sunday in 1940, and then again in 2008. The celebration of the day is adjusted in such a scenario. In 1940, it was observed on the 3rd of April, and in 2008, it was observed on the 15th of March. Now, until 2160, St. Patrick's Day will not fall under the Holy Week. People all over the world eat corned beef and cabbage as a traditional St. Patrick's Day meal. But this food combination is actually Irish American rather than Irish in origin. Up until the latter half of the 1900s, St. Patrick's Day in Ireland was much more somber than its American counterpart. Most people attended Mass and watched a military parade, but the one thing they didn't do was go to bars, which were all closed for the day. I think that's quite hard to imagine, because you really do associate the celebrations of St. Patrick's Patrick's Day as being a very social event. A lot of people get together and there's a lot of drinking and celebrating and things of that nature. So yeah, it's quite difficult to imagine that one. Finding a 4-leaf clover on St. Patrick's Day is considered lucky, as you only have a 1 in 10,000 chance. Clovers mainly grow with 3 leaves, but 4 leaves do occur a lot less frequently. Yeah, I mentioned this briefly a bit earlier, how your chances of finding a 4-leaf clover are fairly slim. So there we go, we can actually put a figure on it. You have a 1 in 10,000 chance. So obviously they exist, but they're just a lot less common to find. I'm not exactly sure where you do find clovers. That probably sounds a bit silly, but I don't. I mean, you don't just walk about Ireland and randomly see clovers lying around. So yeah, I don't think I've ever seen either a 3-leaf clover or a 4-leaf clover ever up close before. And finally, in the 19th century, so many Irish babies were named after St. Patrick that Paddy went from being a nickname for someone named Patrick to a name for any Irishman in general. It's true, the name Paddy is hugely popular, even here in the north of Ireland. Everybody seems to know a Paddy, and it seems to be very rare that they're called Patrick, maybe by their parents, but any Patrick that I've ever known has gone by the name Paddy. And you also get the very well-known jokes that begin with Paddy the Irishman, and I don't actually know any of those jokes myself, but it is very common, and a lot of people know Paddy the Irishman jokes. So yeah, I think a lot of people do know a Paddy, or have done at some point in their life. And as of the recording of this video, I actually know 2 Paddys. So there we go. Alright, so that concludes the facts portion of the video. And now it's time to move on to the 5 multiple choice quiz questions as promised, based on the information contained within this video. So good luck with the questions and let's begin. So, question 1. When was St. Patrick born? Was it 380 AD, 385 AD, or 390 AD? Well, if you said 385 AD, well done, you are correct for the first question. Moving on to question 2. What percentage of Americans claim Irish ancestry? Is it almost 10%, almost 11%, or almost 12%? Well, if you said almost 12%, give yourself a pat on the back. You Is it Arkansas, Alabama, or Alaska? And the correct answer for that one is Arkansas. Okay guys, question 4. In what year did Chicago first dye their river green to celebrate St. Patrick's Day? Was it 1960, 1961, or 1962? Well, if you said 1962, well done, you got the correct answer there. And finally, question 5. What is the traditional St. Patrick's Day meal eaten all over the world as part of the celebrations? Is it corned beef and potatoes, corned beef and cabbage, or corned beef and carrots? Well, this is actually something that I had never heard of before, but if you said corned beef and cabbage, well done, you are correct. So there we have it. How did you get on with the 5 quiz questions? Let me know down in the comments below, and well done if you got 5 out of 5 for that quiz. Well guys, that is almost it for another Whisper Facts episode, but I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about St. Patrick's Day. Coming from a part of Ireland myself, I really enjoyed learning about the holiday, and I hope you guys did as well. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like down below. Consider subscribing to support the channel, and also feel free to post some topic suggestions that you'd like to see made for future videos, and I will see what I can do. But thank you for joining me, and until next time,